Hello there. Hope you're doing great. Welcome back to another session on cybersecurity. In this session, we'll be taking a look at some specific scans in Nmap. We'll understand scans like -SA, the acknowledgement scan. We'll understand SX, the Xmas scan, and we'll take a look at scans like SS, the SYN scan, ST, the TCP Connect scan. We'll also look at how these scans work and what are the results that we are going to get after we scan systems using these Nmap scans. So before understanding all these scans, as I told you, this is a TCP SYN scan, this is a TCP Connect scan, so this is a TCP Xmas scan, and this is a TCP acknowledgement scan, and we also have TCP Null scan. So all these scans are related to TCP ports. And we'll understand what is a TCP handshake before even looking at these scans. So let's take a look at what is a TCP handshake. So here I have a visualization for you. Say we have this client and server. Client and server, they are going to participate in a communication. So client is going to initiate the communication. So before the actual data transfer happens, there should be a handshake between the client and the server. We call this to be the TCP three-way handshake. So what client does is it sends a TCP packet which is having the SYN flag. This flag is set to 1, and it also generates a 32-bit initial sequence number. This sequence number, we call it X. We can consider that to be any number. For example, let me give that number as for demonstration purposes. Let me say the number is 123 or something like that. Just for the demo purposes, we'll take it as 123. And this packet is first sent to the server. So what the server does is it understands there's a TCP three-way handshake initiated by the client. So now the server will acknowledge that by sending us a packet wherein we have the SYN flag set to 1, and the acknowledgement is nothing but it's going to take this ISN generated by the client, increment that by 1. Let's say it is 123 plus 1, so it will be 124. And the server generates its own sequence number, initial sequence number. We call that Y. Let's say the sequence number is 656. So this is the response that the server gives if it is ready to accept that handshake. And after receiving this acknowledgement from the server, what the client does is it sends an acknowledgement back, which is nothing but it takes the sequence number from the server generated by the server, and then it increments it by 1, and then it sends it back as an acknowledgement. So this completes the three-way TCP handshake. So all the communication transfer of pages happen after this handshake is complete. So what is that we understand here is client initiates a SYN request, and then this is acknowledged from the server using a SYN plus ACK, and again an ACK is sent from the client to the server, which completes our TCP three-way handshake. I hope you're clear with this handshake process. Now after the communication, see, now the transfer of pages happens back and forth after this TCP three-way handshake. So client transfers some data to the server and server transfers some response to the client. So after the communication is over, there will be certain things that will be happening. Let's take up some scenarios here. The first scenario is what if the client sends a SYN request to the server and the server is not ready to accept the connection? The server is not willing to accept the connection, or the server is not ready for acceptance. What will happen? Then the server will terminate the connection by sending a packet with a reset flag. So this is a reset packet that will be sent. So what happens after this? There is no TCP three-way handshake. The handshake is not complete, so the connection is terminated. So this scenario happens when the server is not ready to accept the connection due to various reasons, and it wants to terminate the connection initiated by the client. The next scenario we're going to see is a complete three-way handshake has happened between the client and the server, and the data transfer has happened, the pages and the responses have have completed. Now the client wants to terminate the connection. Say the client is not having any more further data to send to the server. The client is done with the data transfer. So how this terminates a well-established connection is the client sends a packet with a FIN flag set to 1. What the server does is the server acknowledges that flag. So now, from now on, the client is not going to transfer any data to the server, but the server can still send responses back to the client. So what the server does when it has no further data to transfer, the server will send a FIN packet. So here this packet with a FIN flag set to 1, and the client will acknowledge it. So this completes the, or this terminates the connection. So in what way it terminates the connection? The client has got no more data to send, so it sends a packet with a FIN flag set to 1, and the server acknowledges it with an ACK set to 1. And when the server has no further data to send to the client, the server sends a FIN, and then acknowledgement is sent back. So this happens. A FIN request is actually associated with an well-established TCP three-way handshake. First, the TCP three-way handshake is established. Next, files and responses are transferred. Once when the transfer is done, then a FIN is generated. So FIN is done after the entire communication is done from the client and the server. So this completes the communication, or this terminates the communication after successful data transfer. So now we are going to understand, I hope you all are clear with what is an TCP three-way handshake and what are the flags that are used. What kind of flags we have seen so far? We have seen SYN flag, we have seen the ACK flag, we have seen the FIN flag, we have seen the reset flag. There are other two flags too, which I want to bring to your attention at this point in time. That is the push flag and then the urgent flag. See, there is a window size that is getting, we call that window size, that is getting advertised or sent with these requests. So what is that window size? Window size is that when you send some data, it will be sent to the buffer on the server or on the client. So this data is actually how much data can be buffered on the server. That relates to the window size. So how many bytes I can buffer, that is the window size. So when I have a push flag set to 1, it just means that push the data in the buffer to the application. So it's like clear the buffer, push the data to the upper layers. So when you send a packet with a push flag set to 1, it means just push the data in the buffer to the upper layers. And what is the use of urgent flag? And when data comes with an urgent flag set to 1, it means that we have some high priority data here. What do you mean by high priority? Say if you're transferring a large file and then you want to uh, what to say, cut short the transfer, you want to terminate the transfer of that specific file, maybe you give a control C. So now control C has got a higher priority because it's going to terminate the file transfer. I'm just giving an example here. So urgent flag, when it is set to 1, it means that the data that has got some higher priority than what was received. So these are the flags: push flag, urgent flag, reset flag, finish flag, acknowledgement flag, and SYN flag. So these flags take part in a TCP handshake and TCP communication. Now let us move ahead. I hope you're all clear with these flags, how TCP three-way handshake happens. Now let us take a look at how to perform Nmap scans. I was telling you we have so many Nmap scans that we are going to understand today. The Null scan, the Xmas scan, what are the scans we are going to take a look at. We are going to take a look at the acknowledgement scan, the SYN scan. We are going to take a look at the TCP Connect scan. We'll understand how these scans work, and we'll be referring to all the flags that we have learned just now to understand these scans. So the demonstration I'm going to show you for Nmap involves this architecture. So I have my laptop which is using Windows 11 operating system. On top of it, I have installed VirtualBox as the hypervisor, and we have Kali Linux 2024 installed as a virtual machine, which comes pre-installed with Nmap, and we have Metasploitable 2, the vulnerable Linux machine. And these two machines are actually in the network. The option I have used for the network is host only adapter. So in case if you're not clear with how to set up this environment, I'll be leaving the link for the environment setup videos in the description below. Have a look at it. So this is the demonstration we're going to have, and I'll be showing a demo with these systems, that is Kali Linux and Metasploitable 2. Now we'll take a look at the very first scan, the SYN scan. So what the SYN scan does is when I perform an Nmap from Kali Linux to the victim system with the IP 226.4. So let me also write the IP addresses here. The IP address of Kali Linux is 192.168.226.3, and IP address of Metasploitable 2 is 192.168.226.4. So when I perform an Nmap from Kali Linux to Metasploitable, and when I perform this SYN scan, what it means is you have the client. Now you can think of Kali Linux to be the client, and we can think of the another machine, that is M2, to be the server. Now what happens is the client now initiates a SYN request. It sends an ISN as the sequence number. Now this SYN request will be taken by the server, and then the server will respond with an SYN plus acknowledgement flag. We have already seen what is the use of SYN plus acknowledgement. So now there is a response from the server. Whereas our client, what we are going to do now is we are not going to complete the handshake. We'll terminate the handshake by sending a reset packet. Our main goal is to understand whether the port is open or closed. Whether the port is open or closed. So once when the port is open, we are going to get an SYN plus acknowledgement back. So when there is a port that is closed, then what is that we are going to get? We are going to get an REST packet back. So based on the response from the server, we'll be able to understand whether the port is open or closed. That is the idea here. And you can very well see here, we are getting a SYN plus ACK back, so we can very well conclude the port is open, and we will not complete the entire TCP three-way handshake because we want to keep the scan a little stealthy. We are not interested in establishing a TCP three-way handshake here. We just want to understand whether the port is open or closed. So by this scan, we call this half scan or the SYN scan. We'll be able to understand whether the port is open or closed. So this is the these are the packets which I have captured using Wireshark, a packet capturing tool between my client and the server, or between Kali Linux and M2. So you see here from 226.3, the Kali Linux machine, to 226.4, there is a SYN request being sent. This is the window size I was talking to you about, and there's a SYN packet sent. So now from Metasploitable 2, from my server to the client or else the Kali Linux machine, what is being sent? A SYN plus ACK is being sent. And after this, what happens is we, from the Kali Linux machine, we are not interested in establishing a complete TCP three-way handshake. So a REST packet, a packet with the reset flag is set and the connection is terminated. And this I have done very specific for port number 21. So I focused on a specific port so that we get limited number of packets with respect to the scan, and I was able to capture the packets here, and you're able to see the complete transfer of packets and the flags that are set in this communication. So by this process, what I was able to determine was port 21 is open because it's acknowledging the packet that we have sent with the SYN flag set to 1. Now let us go back and let's check this. Let's take a demo. So here I have Kali Linux, and here I have Metasploitable. So the IP address of my victim is 192.168.226.4, and the IP address of Kali Linux is 192.168.226.3. So now what is that we are going to perform here is we'll perform an Nmap. The scan is a SYN scan, and we'll focus on port 21 just to keep the results limited. You can scan all the ports. I just want to focus on port 21, the FTP port, to keep the results limited. So let us run the scan. Let's see what's the result. Since the port is open in that machine, we are going to get the result back as port open. Port number 21 is open. So you see here, port 21 is open. And how did we determine that port is open? We determined that by this specific process. We sent a SYN, we got a SYN plus SAC, and we determined the port is open. And we terminated the connection intentionally because we want that to be stealthy. We are not interested in establishing a complete connection with the server. We just want to know whether the port is open or closed. I hope you're clear with the SYN scan. Let's move on to the next scan, that is the TCP Connect scan. As the scan says here, we are going to establish a complete three-way handshake. So what is this complete three-way handshake? We'll send a SYN, and then we'll get a SYN plus ACK, and then we'll also send an ACK. So we are establishing a complete connection with the victim or the server here. So by this process, what we understand is if we get a SYN plus ACK, the port is open, and we also establish an acknowledgement back. So when we get a SYN plus ACK, the port is open. When we get a RST flag sent to us back, then the port is closed. So what we are going to get by a TCP Connect scan is we'll be able to get, let me write it here. When the port is open, what will happen? We'll get this SYN plus ACK flag sent to us. When the port is closed, what we are going to get the response as a reset flag. So since the port is open, what we are going to get now is a SYN plus ACK back, and we'll also be acknowledging that. So this is not a stealthy scan. We are establishing a complete three-way handshake here. So this is what I got from the packet capturing tool after I have run this TCP Connect scan. We are sending a SYN packet. We are getting a SYN plus acknowledgement back. So from M2 Metasploitable 2 to Kali Linux, we are getting an acknowledgement back. Again from Kali Linux 2026.3 to 2026.4, we are sending an acknowledgement. So what this does is it completes the TCP three-way handshake, and by this process we define whether the port is open or closed. Let's run the scan now. Let's take a look at running the scan. Control L, and let's perform Nmap. It's a connect scan on port 21. So since the port is open, we are going to get an acknowledgement with a SYN flag set, and we'll also send an acknowledgement back. By this process, what we determine whether the port is open or closed. This is not a stealthy scan because we are establishing a complete TCP handshake with the other system. So we see here port is open, and you can take a look at the results. Since we got an SYN plus ACK and we are sending an ACK, we have Nmap has come to a conclusion that the port is open after the TCP Connect scan. So what is the use of these scans? To determine whether the port is open or closed. That is the purpose here. The next scan we are going to take a look at is an acknowledgement scan, as we are seeing here, and we'll also send an acknowledgement scan focused on port 21 here. So what is that we have is the client and the server, and here directly the client sends an acknowledgement packet. So what do you mean by directly sending? See, client should initiate with a SYN request, but here client is sending an ACK. This is like an this is like an illegal packet to the server. It doesn't understand what is an hack. So when the port is open or closed, what it's going to say is it's going to send a reset flag. See, that is according to the standard. If you directly get an ACK with a packet with ACK flag set to 1, Whether the port is open or closed, we should send a REST packet. Suppose if we get an ACK, forget this. Suppose if the server gets an ACK, and if the port is firewall protected, then the packet will be dropped. You will not get any response back. So what is the main purpose of the acknowledgement scan is to check whether the port is filtered or whether the port is unfiltered. What do you mean by filtered? Whether it is protected by a firewall. What is unfiltered? Whether the port is open or closed. Whether the port is not having a firewall. So the main reason to have an acknowledgement scan is to check whether the port is filtered, whether it's having a firewall or not. If it's not having a firewall, we get the responses unfiltered. So how you check that? Directly, without any SYN or any proper packets. What the client will do is it will directly send an acknowledgement. When the server directly gets an acknowledgement not related to any other connection that was established previously. So this is like an illegal packet. What this act means? So when the port is open or closed, it's going to send a REST packet back. So it means the port is actually unfiltered. It's responding. When the port is protected by a firewall, when you send a direct ACK flag, the packet will be dropped. There'll be no response from the client. So this is what we are seeing here. Since I don't have any firewall running on the victim, when I send a packet, so this scan, actually what it has initiated a packet wherein the ACK flag is set to 1. So directly we send an acknowledgement, the server doesn't know what it is and the port is open. So how it responds is it sends a packet with a REST flag set to 1. So by this process, what we understand is the port is unfiltered. We are not having any firewall. If I really had a firewall, this response will not come. So we can say the port is filtered then. So let me run this scan and show you. So what is that we are going to run here is Nmap SSA. That's the acknowledgement scan. Let's run this up. So here you see we get the port to be unfiltered because we got a REST response back from the M2 machine. So when you get an ACK flag and you respond with a REST packet, it means the port is unfiltered. If you have not received any response, then the port is filtered. So this is with respect to the acknowledgement scan. We still have some more scans to look at. Let's go forward. Let's take a look at null scan. What do you mean by a null scan is we send a packet directly to the server with all the flags set to null. SYN, FIN, ACK, push, urgent, everything is set to null. So this means the packet is actually an illegal packet to the server, right? You don't have anything set to 1. Everything is set to null. So it's considered illegal. So when the port is closed, what will be the response back is the response will be a REST flag. So you get a null packet when the port is closed according to the standards, the server will respond with the REST flag. In case the port is open or protected with a firewall, if, if these two conditions are there, then there'll be no response from the server. So by this process, we send a null flag, we get a REST packet back, we say the port is closed, we determine, okay, the port is closed. If we send all flags to be null and we're not getting any response, we can say the port is either open or the port is filtered. So the response we are going to get is, if it is closed, we'll say the port is closed if we get a REST packet. If we get no response, we'll conclude the port is open or filtered. So now let us run this null scan. Let's take a look at what is this null scan. So nmap is n. And since our port is open on the victim, we are not going to get any response back. So what is that we conclude? The port is either open or it can be filtered. Since there is no response, two options are possible. The packet is dropped because the port is open or the port is filtered. So these are the two options when we don't get a response back. And I also included that in this specific output. So you see here, we are sending uh, a TCP, okay, pointer options. So we are sending a packet wherein all the, I'm sorry, let me select this again. We are sending a packet wherein all flags are set to null. And there is no response. There is no rest flag. There's no response back from the victim or the server. So what we conclude here is the port is open or the port is filtered. These two options are possible, and we use a null scan for that. The next scan we are going to take a look at is the SX scan or the Xmas scan. So what is the use of the Xmas scan is, it's like from the client, we'll directly send a packet with these flags set, fin, push, and urgent flag is set to 1, whereas all the other flags, SYN, ACK, all these flags are set to 0. So when the server gets this, if the port is closed, it will respond with a REST. So that is the standard. If the port is closed, if port 21 is closed, then we are going to get an RST. So we can determine the port is closed. Or else, if we send pin, push, and urgent flag set to 1, if the port is open or firewall protected, then there will be no response from the victim. So by this process, we can determine whether the port is closed or whether the port is open or filtered. So let's take a look at this example. So when we perform this scan focused on port 21, you can see in the Wireshark, we have captured a packet with all these flags set directly to 1. And since the port is open in a victim, there was no response. So we didn't get any response back from the victim. So what is that we determine by that? The port is either open or filtered. So this is an Xmas scan. Let's quickly run this scan. Let's take a look at it. This Nmap S X. I'm just focusing on port 21 so that our results are limited. We are not just we are not getting a large volume of results here. So we will focus on the one specific port just to limit the results we are going to analyze. So in my victim, the port 21 is open, so we are not going to get any response back like a REST packet or anything. So it will conclude the port is open or filtered, because when it is open, there will be no response. When it is filtered also, the packet will be dropped. There will be no response. So this you call that an SX scan. So what all scans we have learned? SYN scan, uh, connect scan, the acknowledgement scan, the null scan, and then the Xmas scan. Very important. You should never be confused with all these scans whenever you take a look at these things. There's also a scan which is focused on the UDP ports alone. You want to scan the UDP ports, you just give that. Say for DNS, we use 53, port number 53, which is a very good example. Say you're focused on scanning the UDP ports like a DNS port, we are going to get the results focused on those ports, and this is the specific scan for that. So not only that, we have various other scans in Nmap, like traceroute, writing to an output file, and having verbosity on your output, and finding the reason, and other things. So after the results of this, we'll take a look at those things. So port 53 is open in my victim system. So let's take a look at this output. So this scan is taking time. Maybe you can explore that. Let me go to other scans. So let's take a look at some more scans in Nmap, like Nmap. Let me give the victim's IP. And this is the packet trace scan. So let's take a look at what is packet trace scan. So this gives us the list of packets transferred back and forth. So whatever packets that are transferred back and forth, the client and the victim, or the client and the server, you can very well see the entire uh, packets that are transferred between Kali Linux and the victim, and also from the victim to Kali Linux, everything is going to be shown here. So this is, if you're interested in tracing the entire packets, then you can go with packet trace. Not only that, we have more commands like if you want, if you're just focused on the ports that are open, we're not interested in the ports that are closed, then we can give this command hyphen hyphen open. So this is going to list only the ports that are open in our victim. Yeah, so we are only focused on ports that are open. Ports that are closed will not be shown in this result. Let's take a look at another scan, that is traceroute. So Nmap the IP of the victim and trace route. So this is going to give us the number of hops between this specific machine and the victim machine. So that is the use of trace route. It just fetches out the number of hops. So here we have one hop between our system and the destination. The next command we can focus on is nmap reason. So reason, say I'll focus on one specific port number. Let's check. It gives us the reason why it came to conclusion that this specific port is open. So this is another interesting command. So it just says why it says this port is open because it's able to get an acknowledgement back after performing this specific scan on that specific machine. So it's getting a SYN plus ACK back. That's why it says the port is open. So reason, you want to know why a specific port, or what is that result we are getting? What is the reason behind the result we are getting? We can go for this specific command. So let's quickly move on to the more commands before we wind up. Say we can also make the scanned results to be verbose. Verbose in the sense it's going to give us the entire data, or the entire steps behind every scan that you're performing. So it's going to increase the explanation in the output. So you can see earlier we were just getting open or close, something like that. Now we are getting the entire steps and detailed explanation behind these scans. We can also increase the verbosity by giving hyphen VV, so it's going to become more verbose in that sense. So that is how all these scans are done using Nmap. Before winding up, let's take a look at one more scan, that is let me go to this specific scan wherein we'll write the output to a file. Say I'm focused on port number 21 and I'm going to write this entire output to a file. So ON and then nmap output 1.txt. So whatever scan results we are going to get, we can write that to an output file. We can take this file for further analysis later on. So now it's going to perform the scan and it will write the output to a file. What is the file name we are given? Nmap output 1.txt. Okay, so let's take a look at that specific file. Sudo cat nmap output 1.txt. So let's enter the password. So you see our file contains the results. So that's it. That's about this lecture on Nmap scans. We have taken a lot of time to understand certain very specific scans. These scans used to confuse me a lot, so I went in depth, understood what these scans are and how they are different from each other. So we have looked at in depth what is a TCP handshake is and what are the various flags involved in the TCP handshake. We looked at so many different scans like the null scan, acknowledgement scan, Xmas scan, SYN scan, TCP Connect scan, the UDP scan, and other scans like open, packet trace, traceroute, reason, verbosity, and writing the output of the results from an nmap scan to an output file. With us, we are coming to an end of this session. If you have any questions, you can leave those questions in the comments below. That's it for now. Take care.